Hey everyone, so this weekend I was able to see A Cure for Wellness, which is Gore Verbinski's new horror movie, and I really enjoyed it.
There is a sickness inside us, rising like the bile that leaves that bitter taste at the back of our throats. It's there in every one of you seated around the table. Only when we know what ails us can we hope to find the cure.
What do you make of that?
Clearly he's lost his mind.
I'm one of apparently few people that really liked this movie. It actually feels very reminiscent of last year's Neon Demon, where when it came out, people were very divided on whether it was good or terrible, and A Cure for Wellness is much like that. A lot of people think it's good, a lot of people think it's terrible. For me, I lean towards it being good. I think A Cure for Wellness is a good movie, and I think that Neon Demon was a good movie as well. But unlike Neon Demon, where I was kind of on the fence whether I liked it or not, I really liked A Cure for Wellness. I really liked this film. And after my first viewing, I've seen it twice now. After my first viewing, I came out of it feeling about the same way everyone else that hated it did. I was like, that wasn't the greatest movie. It was really weird. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. It was kind of nonsensical sometimes. But as the day went along after I saw it, I started to think about it a lot. And I mean a lot. I went to work for 8 hours and I sat there thinking about the movie for the majority of that time. I think that's exactly why I like this movie, is because not only is it so different, but there's so much happening in it that you can think about all these things and they can almost be felt in the movie. It's very weird. Really, the best way to describe this film is that it's a mix between Shutter Island and The Shining, with a bit of course, Neon Demon in there. So that's one thing that a lot of people are using as a weapon against this movie, is that it's a complete ripoff of better movies and that it throws in ideas from better movies to make it its own movie. And I don't think that that's quite a valid argument, because, I mean, look at Quentin Tarantino. He puts in a bunch of other movies into his own movies and makes it his own thing. And that's what I think A Cure for Wellness does very well. Of course, it feels like Shutter Island, because the main plot is that a young man, businessman, goes to a mental institution to try and figure out what's going on there, because things aren't as they seem. He's trying to find a person and bring him back to New York. So it's very similar to Shutter Island in that respect. There's something sinister going on at this facility. They need to find out what's going on. And that's really the first hour of A Cure for Wellness. It feels very similar to Shutter Island. And then it kind of turns into The Shining, in that you don't really know what's happening. You're not really sure what's real or what's not, or what's a hallucination or a vision. And that's the best stuff in A Cure for Wellness. So the first hour for me is the weakest in this movie. I thought it was very jumbled in parts. It didn't really know quite what it wanted to say. But other than that, I thought this movie was great. I thought that it did everything that it should have done. The marketing for this movie is one reason that I think it's getting destroyed by audiences and critics. The marketing makes it seem like this big, over-the-top horror movie where a lot of things happen, a lot of jump scares happen, and it's very psychological but fast-paced. And that's not what A Cure for Wellness is at all, actually. A Cure for Wellness is a long, drawn-out movie that's very slow, very methodical in how it operates, and I think that worked better for me. And now, of course, a lot of people don't like that style of horror. They don't like the slow burn. They think that it is boring. But for me, it works very well, especially on a second watch. I really recommend going to see this at least twice to really get a feel for the movie, because it is so different. It is so different than what we're used to seeing nowadays. I mean, this is literally playing across the hall from the Lego Batman movie.
Thanks, Batman!
I can only imagine he's going home right now to party the night away, surrounded by friends and lady activewear models.
Hey, computer. I'm home. I'm home. I'm home.
that you'll ever do.
Master Bruce, your greatest fear is...
Snakes?
No.
Clowns?
No. It's being a part of a family again.
No, now it's snake clowns because you put that idea in my head.
We have Marvel movies and Disney movies and Warner Brothers DC movies, and they all feel the same. You know, they all feel like they're made by the same company. They're not anything new or different. They're just the same thing over and over again. And then A Cure for Wellness comes along, and it's so weird and so surreal and so abstract that I think a lot of people were just kind of taken aback by it. And initial reaction that I saw in my theater especially was that people just didn't understand it. People didn't understand what was going on, and that's not to say everyone did. Afterwards, I heard people talking about what this or that meant, and I could tell that they really liked it as much as I did. So while not everyone hates this movie, there is a significant audience that is very loud about how bad this movie is. And I mean, that's even, again, in my movie theater, I even had something like that happen where a guy stood up afterwards and screamed at the screen how much he hated it. And then walking out, he was yelling about how horrible it was and why it doesn't make sense and that it's stupid and that it shouldn't be seen by anybody, actually giving away plot points just by screaming them. He was giving away plot points of the movie and just screaming why he hated it. And I mean, I even heard people walking down the hallway saying that they were about to see the movie and he was just screaming plot points about it. So not everyone hates this movie, but the very vocal people that do hate the movie really, really hate this movie, and they are very vocal about it. And I can understand that. I really can understand that with this movie because it is so weird. And that's why I appreciated it, honestly. But now that I've got all of that nonsense out of the way, let's talk about why I personally liked it. Of course, this is my review, so why wouldn't I talk about why I liked it? That's stupid. But for one, to start off, this movie is technically flawless. I've seen people give this movie like a 1 or a 2 or a 3 even out of 10. And even if I hated it like they did, I don't think I could bring myself to give it below a 5. Because from a technical standpoint, this movie is spot on. There is nothing wrong with it technically. It is completely flawless. Every shot in the movie is insanely beautiful. Gore Verbinski's direction is so visually stunning that it almost makes up for some of the dumb things that happen in the movie. And that is saying something because this movie gets really, really, really ridiculous near the end. And the way it's shot almost makes up for it because of how beautiful it is. Gore Verbinski's direction is absolutely stunning. It's incredible. And the sound effects, watching this in Dolby Atmos, was absolutely amazing. The sound design and the visual effects are so good in this movie. They're all just seamless. I mean, I can't really say enough about it. It's incredibly well made. It is incredibly well made. The meat of any movie is obviously a story, and that is where this movie is a big hit and miss for me. For one, the characters in this movie aren't exactly the greatest, but at the same time, they don't really try to make them interesting, which is, I know, weird. But if you look at movies like The Shining, for example, where that movie is all about like mental degrading, and so the characters don't really matter because they're going insane. And that's what this movie does as well. A Cure for Wellness is that it has a message about personal identity and finding yourself in this modern world where you're told to do everything and follow every instruction to the nth degree. You're told that you have to live a certain way, you have to understand everything a certain way, and that you can't really have a personal identity. And that's what this movie's all about. It's all about finding your personal self. And that is what this movie does so much better than so many other horror movies, is that it has something under the surface. It has subtext. It has subtext for anyone that's paying attention. And that is why, again, you should see this at least twice before really saying whether it's good or bad is because there is subtext going on here that is very interesting. And I know one thing that a lot of people are saying is that it gets absurd and ridiculous near the end. And while I say, yes, it does, I also say, was it ever not absurd and surreal and kind of ridiculous? I mean, you have a scene in a sensory deprivation chamber where a bunch of eels start just swimming around at the bottom. And then he dies, but he doesn't die. And then he's in a bathhouse where a deer appears and leads him to the man that he's looking for. So was it ever not surreal or kind of absurd? So yeah, I know I didn't go into the story too much about this movie, but just trust me when I say that it is a good movie. It's a well done movie with a very, very intriguing story that has some weird parts, some absurd and unrealistic parts. But if you can get on board with the movie, it really is a good movie. It's a fun watch. There's a lot of really nasty things that happen. It's probably going to be the most disturbing movie that I see in 2017. There's some really nasty things that happen in the movie, and it's really screwed up at parts. So viewer beware of that. It's pretty screwed up, not gonna lie. But that kind of is why it was better to me than a lot of other movies that try to do what this movie is attempting, is because it is so over the top and it is so vile. It's so insistent on being vile that I really liked it. Like, the movie doesn't hold anything back. There's a part when a character gets his tooth drilled into. A guy drills into his tooth, and you actually watch it in vivid detail. Like, it's a close-up shot of his mouth, and you watch the drill go into his mouth and through the tooth while it's kind of getting dislodged and bleeding, and then blood goes all over his face as it punches through. And it's shown in graphic detail. Like, that doesn't happen very much anymore. Go see A Cure for Wellness. I actually highly recommend it. On a personal level, I don't know if I can really recommend this to a general audience, though, because a general audience, they want to see movies like The Great Wall. They want to see movies like Lego Batman movie or the latest Marvel movie. And this movie will be so different and so weird and so abstract and surreal and stupid at some parts that people just won't be able to accept it. And I understand that. If you didn't like the movie, I totally understand where you're coming from. But for me, I kind of loved this movie, and I kind of love that it exists and that it's playing across the hall from the Lego Batman movie. So I really enjoyed it. If you want to see this weird thing, be my guest. I'm going to give it a 7 or maybe even an 8 on a third watch. I really feel like it could be an 8. It is a great movie, I feel like. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. If you like this review, leave a like below. If you've seen the movie, comment down below and we can kind of chat about it, because I do love talking about this movie to people. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.